Welcome. This webinar today, I think, is a lot of fun, and it's not necessarily what you would think about in terms of how to be a rich and famous attorney. And I think it's going to be, if you do watch this right now, you're going to get quite a bit of information that you might normally, that you might normally not get in terms of learning how to be very successful practicing law. This is a live webinar. So what will happen is I'll give the webinar. It's not a very long webinar, but it's long enough. And then after the webinar, I'll take as many questions as everyone has. The nice thing is that it's a day after holiday. I do have plenty of time to answer questions because my schedule's pretty open today. As many questions as everyone has, we'll get to today. And the questions can be about this or anything that you have related to your career. There's a real kind of pattern that I notice, and it's an important pattern because whether or not you're at a large firm or not, there's a pattern that I see with attorneys that start out in very large, prestigious law firms. And then within 1 or 2 years, a lot of times they end up leaving the practice of law completely. And it's not just something I see now and then, it's something I see daily. And I see it daily because one of the things I do at BCG Attorney Search, and I spend a lot of time doing it. For example, I start my day very early, 5:30, and then I'm in meetings usually till 8 a.m. And then between 8 and 10, usually I'm reviewing candidates, and then I do it again in the afternoon. And those are people that are applying to BCG Attorney Search looking for jobs. And what I see during that time is I see resumes of people from large law firms that have left the practice of law, and often the exact opposite of what happens to the attorneys that join the smaller, less prestigious law firms out of law school or in those types of firms. So it's very interesting when you see that because it's almost as if going to a smaller law firm and less prestigious law firm is a way to have a better long-term career. And literally, if you join a smaller law firm earlier in your career, out of law school many times, you may actually end up practicing law your entire career. And even though you may make less money when you get out and may feel badly about that, you're actually probably going to make more money over the long run because you'll continue practicing law. And what's interesting is the attorneys that join a lot of smaller firms and mid-sized firms are committed to practicing law. And they have a different experience many times than large firm attorneys because they're talking to clients all day. They're getting involved in the client's issues. And when they sit down to work, many times they're seeing a real connection between the work that they're doing and their clients. And I feel that there's a much closer human connection that often motivates them and makes them feel valued and gives them a lot of control over their careers that attorneys in large law firms may not have. And a lot of times, large law firm attorneys really don't even understand kind of the role of a good attorney because they've spent years, many times working long hours and never meeting clients. And their time really has been dedicated to things like writing memos and doing other sorts of clerical type work that's removed from what normal attorneys do. And when they're quitting these jobs, they're often quitting jobs that are not even really remotely connected to being an attorney. They're different types of positions and something that a lot of attorneys in smaller law firms aren't doing. It's not to say that every job in a large law firm is like that because they're certainly not, but they're more disconnected from the traditional way of practicing law. And because large law firm attorneys also are in the position that they're probably going to lose their jobs, a lot of them end up quitting before they get fired, just out of simple self-respect. They don't want to be in a position where they're let go and they're scared of that, so they quit. And I look at that when I look at this as like large law firm attorneys losing. They lose their spark, and the spark is the motivation and the enthusiasm that led them to practicing law in the first place. And a lot of that happens, I believe, because they don't look at the work as meaningful. There's not as much client contact or a feeling of purpose. They don't feel as much of a prospect of a compelling future, and their spirit often ends up getting crushed. And literally, they want nothing to do with being an attorney. They're rebelling against the profession because the profession is making them feel out of touch with their work and abused. And because this is such a widespread pattern, it really points to something far deeper than that people do not necessarily like large law firms or practicing law. So what happens is a lot of these attorneys simply run out of gas, and they don't have energy because they're not getting positive feedback from their work, and they don't want to keep pushing forward. They lose interest in the subject matter of practicing law, and they have no more desire to play the game. And without this energy, these attorneys often lose focus and literally would rather do anything than practice law again. And it's interesting when you compare the way the practice of law is with this to the assembly line. When cars and other things used to be made, craftsmen used to take great pride in things like spending weeks or months building a single car. And as assembly lines and methods of business became more specialized, people were assigned like one task, such as putting on a wheel and nothing more. And what this meant is that the work became monotonous, very simplistic, and to a large extent, even meaningless for the people doing the work. And as it became more meaningless, the people doing the work started enjoying the work less and less. They became less attached to it. They demanded higher wages. They started organizing unions and became very angry with management. And this sort of anger towards management in the law firm environment is the same thing among associates and others at large law firms today. You can go to different sites where they complain about the firms and their jobs. And it's the same sort of anger that assembly line workers in factories have towards management. But instead of union halls, everyone's organizing on various websites, and they gossip and take great pride in their problems and the problems of law firm partners and their law firms. And a big discussion, the most popular articles, if you want to run a blog article, get traffic to a website, are going to be things about the wages of the law firms and things related to money, because money is the big thing that people get. It's not joy in the work. Many times it's the money. And like factory workers, people are complaining about working conditions. They often spread gossip about their law firms, and they spend their days often doing a lot of meaningless work. And the same thing as a factory worker is valued for the number of hours of work and not much more. It's the same thing with associates and attorneys, and they have the same concerns as blue collar factory workers, even though they're looking like white collar workers. And the people that are doing this work are really running out of energy. They're running out of energy because they're doing meaningless work where they're valued mainly for their hours that they work and nothing more. And again, it's almost when if you have blue collar relatives, and I do, that we worked in factories, they're very tired many times at the end of the day. They come home and often park themselves in front of the TV with a beer, and they're very tired. And then they many times they fight and get divorced and that sort of thing. And they look forward to retirement and not working. That's a big thing. And their concern is working less, earning as much money as possible, and ending everything. And a lot of people that work in blue collar jobs often get sick and die early. And again, just like blue collar workers doing the different types of that type of work, many attorneys are very similar in terms of being very tired of the work and having health problems and the same sort of thing. If you look at an attorney and you see what happens to attorneys that work inside of law firms for years and not advancing, they start looking very unhealthy, and they may gain weight. They may, they may lose their energy and spirit, just looking depressed, and they may walk hunched over, and you can see a noticeable lack of enthusiasm for the work in their face and their voice, and many times it's sad to say, but they really become no different than a factory worker who's been doing the same work for years and is unhappy. And the only difference is the factory worker may be in better shape. And so it's important to understand, and we'll talk more about this today, that the only two things you're really selling to legal employers are your skills as an attorney and your energy as an attorney. And very few attorneys have both the skills and the energy. And that's really why there's very few good attorneys. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is the skills and the attorneys. And, nothing, and this is very interesting. And again, I hope you understand it when we're done, but nothing is really more important than an attorney, or is more common than an attorney who's very smart, but passionless and out of energy, or the attorneys that don't have the skills to be a good attorney. And again, nothing is more in common than an attorney that has both energy and the skills of an attorney. And in fact, the entire fabric of the legal profession has really evolved to concentrate those with both energy and skill at the very top. So I'm going to talk to you today about how to do that and what makes attorneys that have this so successful. And again, if you don't have to be the best attorney, you don't have to be the smartest, you don't have to have the best qualifications, but if you're an average attorney with energy and with skills, or an average attorney just with energy, the odds are very good that you will not possess both of those things. You'll either be a very good attorney with no energy, or you'll be a very good attorney with energy. You'll not be a good attorney with energy. So most people have one or the other. And when you understand how important these two components are and how few attorneys have them, you'll very quickly come to understand why the attorneys at the very top of the pyramid are able to make millions of dollars a year inside of law firms, or even if they're not in law firms, as general counsels and other things, because these two characteristics are very rare. And there's really not a lot of attorneys like them. And so what is meant by skill? Skill means a lot of things. And no list is going to be completely comprehensive, but these are the majority of traits that most law firms use to evaluate the most skilled attorneys. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these because most people already know what they are. But the first one is your educational qualifications. So this is a measure of skill. Your paper qualifications are things like where you went to school, how well you did there. And the reason that this is important in your skill, and again, it's not the only thing that matters, so I'm going to talk about a lot of different things, but if you put 500 very smart people in a top law school class together, a few of the people and a few of them rise to the top, you're going to identify people with a lot of aptitude for practicing law. And legal employers and others pay a lot of attention to educational qualifications because it can show right out of law school how smart and skilled you're likely to be. And they also demonstrate many times, not for everyone, because some people have a lot of innate skill, but they demonstrate if the person has the energy to work hard. And it also shows your intellectual horsepower. Some people don't have the strength aren't literally smart enough to be attorneys. I once knew an attorney who was able to pass the California bar, but and was a litigator, but couldn't understand the difference between federal and state law. And if an attorney doesn't have the ability to understand like simple basic concept, then you're going to get run over by opposing counsel. Because what happens in most cases is smart attorneys go up against attorneys that aren't as smart. And when that happens, the attorneys that are smarter often win. So this is an important fact to understand, that if you are a very smart attorney, you have a leg up when you're going against attorneys that aren't smart. And there's attorneys, honestly, that are like win pretty much every negotiation, most cases, and they just have the ability to really masterfully interpret and process information in a way that works in their client's favor. And this is a very important characteristic of attorneys, is getting good results and being able to see things that opposing counsel doesn't see. And again, anyone can go to law school. I learn new law schools every day. I was looking at a resume this morning, and there was like Northern California Institute of Law or something that I'd never heard of that law school. And I learn of new law schools every day. And so it's anybody that wants to can be a lawyer and go to law school. And so this type of skill that you have can generally be measured by your performance in law school and the quality of the law school you attended. So what does that mean? If you were able to get into a really good law school, it means you probably do really well on your LSATs and have really good grades, which is the LSATs are something that show how well you can do. And your skill can generally be measured by that information and to some extent. And it's for that reason that a lot of large law firms really won't even bother with people from certain law schools or people who are not at the top of their classes from various law schools. It's important to them because it's something that shows how well your aptitude for practicing law, how well you're going to be able to interpret information, and then what that'll mean for the client when you go up against other people that aren't as smart. And so these highly selective firms will often view your law school performance as a measure of your skill. And part of their brand is really having the most skilled and smartest attorneys working on various matters, and also having people that went to these schools and these educational qualifications shows potential clients that they have the smartest and most skilled lawyers, as measured by your rankings and academic honors, and that who have the intellectual strength to win against other attorneys. And so this is why the educational qualifications are important. Now, again, there are lots of practice areas and types of firms where this doesn't matter, but I'm trying to tell you why this is one measure of skill that is important. But again, a lot of practice areas, this doesn't matter at all. Certain practice areas, personal injury, even family law to some extent, a lot of mass torts and a lot of other things, this isn't going to be as important as it would be in a lot of other practice areas. And you can actually become extremely successful with other skills rather than your ability to out-reason other people in those practice areas. And I'll go into a little bit of that today. Another measure of skill is always going to be your prior employment history. And so what that means is that one of the greatest ways that a law firm can evaluate your skill levels are based on your skill and your prior employment history. If you've worked for several years at a really good firm, the odds are very good that you have the skill to be a good attorney. And it's implied by the quality of the law firm where you've worked, just as it is implied by the quality of the law school that you may have attended. Because if you're able to work at a really good law firm for a long period of time, the presumption is that you've done work at a skill level matching other highly skilled attorneys, and you're also the skill level. If you didn't have that, you would have been fired. So it's basically showing that you're up at the quality, or you're doing the quality of work, and also have the interpersonal skills to stay employed at a major law firm, which is a very important thing. And it's quite common, for example, for attorneys from great law schools to join top law firms, and then for it quickly to come to light that they don't have the skills to be practicing at the level of other top attorneys in the firm. And what that means is they miss details. They may not care enough to follow through. They may turn in sloppy work product. They may have other personal issues, and they typically are let go from top law firms very quickly. So what does that mean? It means that they'll be at one firm for a short period of time, then they might be at another one for a year, and then another one. And if you don't stick around for a long period of time at a law firm, then the law firm's not going to believe that you have the skill level to do it. It doesn't mean that they're not skilled attorneys, but it does mean that there's something wrong with them staying employed. And so the law firms will take that as something that is a negative impact on looks negative for your skills. But the longer you are with a large law firm, the more skill you're presumed to have. And if you've been at a major law firm for more than a few years, the odds are that you have the same sorts of skills that other major law firms are looking for. And it speaks very highly of your skill level. It also speaks very highly of your skill level, even if you didn't go to a good law school and have good grades, but you're able to go into a large firm and stay there employed for a long time. That means you're doing work at that firm's level. And that's a very important thing. So the other one that I think is one of the most important issues in terms of what makes a good and a very skilled attorney is the ability to see things that other attorneys do not. And the best attorneys and the most skilled ones typically do not have just intellectual abilities and skill. They also have the ability to cut through very complex facts and see ideas and concepts and interpretation of facts that other attorneys do not. And this is really one of the real skills of the very best attorneys, and something very few attorneys have. It was interesting. I was talking to someone the other day that had been at Harvard when Henry Kissinger was a professor there, which he was at like the age of, 32 or something. And back then he was a professor at Harvard at the age of 32. And back then, which is pretty rare, I think, and he'd written a book about atomic energy, and this is in the 50s, or atomic power or bombs or something, when people really weren't thinking about that. So this was a real issue that no one was able to see. And the issue was what made him so remarkable, apparently, was his ability to spot issues and trends and ideas and things that other people would, when they would look at the same ideas, wouldn't come up with these incredible interpretations. And this is something that makes sense and that other people aren't seeing. And the best attorneys are able to do the same thing as well. And very few attorneys are able to do this. And because these attorneys can see all these things that other people can't see, it allows them to be much more effective advocates for their clients. And probably less than 1 in 100 attorneys have this skill. It's the ability to look at things and understand arguments and ideas of and ways to interpret information that other people are missing. Most people are just looking at the ways other people are looking at things, and very few attorneys are able to use wide varieties of information, often from different disciplines, to reach incredible conclusions and arguments that other attorneys don't see, and that are able to convince people at all different levels to understand them. And it's generally not tested in most law schools. It's a skill that very few attorneys have. It's the kind of thing when you see it, and when attorneys do possess this skill, they become extremely valuable to both sophisticated clients and law firms, but very few people have this kind of skill. And if you possess that, it's the kind of thing that gets around. It's the kind of thing that people see. And it's the kind of thing where you have to be very smart to see it, and very few people see it. But if an attorney has this, it is something that is very important, very regarded, and very few people have it. And this is one reason that you see when you watch crime shows and things, and they have these really good attorneys that are able to win cases, or you watch different things. This is the skill that very few attorneys have, and what makes people very effective. And then another one is the ability to get along with different types of people. A skill in the legal environment is also your ability to get along with different types of people, including those that you're working with. And if you're unable to get along with different types of people in the office, the odds are you're going to have a very difficult time succeeding in a law firm. Now, back to the Henry Kissinger example, this person that knew Henry Kissinger and watched him also said that one thing he was able to do was able to ingratiate himself with very powerful people by saying nice things to them in a way that didn't seem that he wasn't trying to gain favor with them and make a lot of very powerful people like him, instead of turning those people off. And this is another type of skill a lot of times that very, very powerful attorneys have. They're able to get other people to respect them or believe in them, and they often do it in a very kind of not direct way. And if an attorney is not able to get along with superiors or other people in the office, the odds are that they're going to have a very difficult time succeeding in a law firm. I remember a guy that I went to law school with, and he's the head of a major law firm, like a big law firm's national corporate practice. He was an okay student, which is not great, that one thing or another, but really had the ability to make everyone like him. Just everyone would be super nice to everyone and smiling. And that's a quality that goes a long way in law firms as well, when you can get all sorts of people to like you. And for whatever reason, a lot of times attorneys get inside of law firms and their mind starts playing tricks on them. They may see conflict where there is none. They see trouble where there's not trouble. They think people are saying mean things to them or implying things when they're not. They take sides with different people about conflicts and get involved in that. And then they see the law firm and the people in it as more political than the law firm actually is. And they get involved in things that they shouldn't. And the ability to stay involved or stay employed in law firms in most legal environments really does require very good people skills. And that is a skill. And it's something, if you don't have it, that's important to learn. You can fix your people skills a lot of different ways. There's classes in Dale Carnegie, there's therapists, there's all sorts of ways, but having really good people skills is a skill, and it's something that you need to be very successful. And if you don't have it, then you need to try to work on it. And anybody can work on it, anybody can fix it. But if you don't fix it, then you're often going to be in a lot more trouble than you should be. And it's going to hinder you from going as far as you should. And then another one is the ability to not stop learning. The best attorneys don't stop learning and continue learning about what they do and sharpening their skills. They're not only interested in what they do, but they're hungry for much more information and to learn how to be better, to learn different practice area, different aspects of their practice area. They don't believe that they know everything at some point, like they keep trying to learn different ways of doing things. They go to seminars, they really do whatever they can to get better and get more and more information. You could give a book, this is just an example, you could give a book about how to take depositions to a senior litigator that may have been litigating for 20 years or more. And if they thought the book was good, they would sit down and read it. And their interest in what they do and information about it means that they're continually getting better and better at what they do. They're hungry for information. They don't believe they know everything. Just a second. They don't believe that they know everything, and they're interested in what they're doing, and they want to continually get better and better, even if it's only like a small piece of information that they may get from a book. They know that every little bit of information they get is going to make them better and better. And in contrast, a lot of people stop doing that. So a lot of people believe that they know everything. They say, I know this. And when you tell them, or they get defensive about different things, and your ability to continually get better and know things is really important. I see that, by the way, with recruiters. It's very interesting because when I started in the recruiting business, the job was basically you would get a job from a firm, and then you would call every person in the city you could to try to submit them to that job, and then hopefully you made a placement. And that was a model that was going around since I don't know, the 1980s, or maybe sooner or later. And then it became, when we got in the business, it became, no, there's more than one job you can apply for. There's more than one firm. And we started doing that. And then, but that was only certain types of candidates, like the best candidates from the best firms. And then our business, my business changed to doing attorneys that work in different practice areas, not just big practice areas and big law firms. And when I did that, a whole generation of recruiters in our company couldn't make that connection and start doing that. And so that went by the wayside. And so it's just every time the recruiting business changes, most recruiters, for example, will stick with doing one thing. So if you go to our website and you that everything's online, the different types of things we do, but very few recruiters are able to make that switch. And it's like that for most businesses, and it's like that for most people. People will continue doing the same thing over and over again. And the companies and the businesses that survive are the ones that, and the people that continually keep improving. So if you look at like automakers go out of business all the time, but most automakers that are in business are constantly improving and getting better and better. I remember I took a ride. It was fun. There was a president of Volkswagen they had an office in Detroit, and then head of General Motors came over to, it was just some sort of event for homecoming. We were decorating a float or something, but came over to a house, and he brought a brand new Corvette. And the president of Volkswagen, he said, you should take a ride in it. And the president of Volkswagen, I was standing there, and he said, do you want to come with me? And so I got in the Corvette with him. And he said, the reason that German cars are selling so well in the United States compared to American cars is what a German car does is they build a brand, like they'll build like a 3 Series BMW, and they'll keep that model like the way it looks on the outside for maybe 5-10 years, but they'll continually keep refining all the stuff that's happening. They'll keep making it better and better and questioning how the things are bolted together, or how the turn signals work, and everything that goes inside the car that you may not see. They'll continue refining that over and over again. But what the American car company will do is they'll just put some new fins on it or change the headlights or something, and then they won't keep working on the inside of the car. Now, this was in the 30 years ago or longer than that. But the point is that the company, and that time, the German car companies and the Japanese car companies were all gaining more and more market share compared to the American companies that were unable to change this old business model. So the idea is to improve. You need to constantly be improving yourself and constantly stop learning and not get defensive and not think you know everything, and continually get better and better. Because if you do that, you're going to be very far ahead of anyone else that you're competing with. And it's a very important point, and not something that a lot of people are able to do, and something that can make you very successful. If you look at what I try to do with you in these webinars, I'm trying to get you to keep learning and to keep getting better. And each one of these little things that you learn can make you very successful. I hear from attorneys weekly that have followed this stuff that have become successful by continuing learning it. Most people are not hungry to learn and improve. And so if you're hungry to learn and improve, that's one of the greatest assets you have. Even if you start out, I've seen people start out and not be able to get a job and fail the bar multiple times, and then finally get a job in a small firm, and then from there, move up and wind up at big law firms. I've seen solo practitioners do that couldn't get a job out of law school. If you keep improving and never stop learning, that's one of the greatest assets you possibly can have, and not something that a lot of people do. And it's something that makes the best companies work. It's something that makes the best law firms work. It's something that makes the best attorneys work, and something that I hope you never stop doing, because it's very important. And then the next one is the ability to get the best result in whatever matter you're representing your clients in. Hugely important. A skilled attorney is skilled precisely because they win a lot. And what makes somebody win? It's not just being smart. It's hundreds, if not thousands, of decisions that go into everything that they do. It could be in a negotiation. It could be in court. It could be just in general, winning more often than not. And there's, of course, a wide variety of reasons for why people win. But what's important to understand is that the best attorneys are able to succeed on behalf of their clients more often than they fail. Is it because they're working harder? Is it because they're continually learning? Is it because they're seeing things that other people do not? And it's an issue of skill, and it makes it. It's a skill that makes it possible, is one of the things that makes someone a good attorney. So just think about people that you know. There are people that everything they touch seems to turn to gold. There are people with relationships, that every relationship they get in seems to be a positive relationship. There are people that in business, everything that they do seems to work. And there are people where the opposite happens, where things don't work all the time, where every relationship is bad, where every job is something bad, where every matter they work on, they fail, and where they say, oh, this is just the kind of thing that happens to me. The problem is that when bad things are happening to someone, there's other people that bad things aren't happening to, that aren't losing. So you want to be on the side of someone that's winning all the time. And you also want to surround yourself, by the way, with people that are winning all the time. And this is just a big point that I can't emphasize enough. If you spend your time and work time with people that are happy and doing well, then you probably will be happy and do well. If you spend your time with people that aren't happy and not doing well, then you will probably not do well, because you're just picking up their thought patterns and defeatist attitude and all that sort of thing. So one of the best ways to get the best results is to surround yourself with people that are already getting the results, because they have different ways of thinking about things than you do. There's an interesting story that Tony Robbins told once, and I think it was in a seminar, and he said that he was asked to join this group of very successful and wealthy people from Los Angeles that would rent planes and travel all over the world. And they did something like asked him, said it was $200,000 a year to join this group, and they would take different trips and things. And he said to the person, I can't afford to do this. This is way too expensive. And he said, you cannot afford to do it, because these people are going to take you to another level just by spending time with them that you never would imagine. This is when he was very young in his career. So he did, and that's exactly what happened. His whole career and life changed by spending time around people that were already successful. So spending your time with people that are doing well, and finding and seeking out attorneys that are doing well and getting good results, is going to pay off. You will see what they do. It may be that they work harder. It may be that they ask more questions, and maybe that they understand the other side better. But if you're able to do that, that's a major marker of skill. The next thing is the ability to bring in business. This is a big skill. It's something that you should learn. Some attorneys can do this and others cannot. The skill generating business is something that makes an attorney successful. It always has been most of the history, and always will be. And if you can bring in a sufficient amount of high paying clients, you're able to be successful just about anywhere. It's arguably more important than your ability to practice law at a high level. It's because if you're able to bring in clients, that work will support you and support your firm. And it's extremely important. And one of the most important things that an attorney can learn. It's funny, I was talking to this law firm not too long ago, a few years ago, and I was talking to a couple of partners in an office, and the wasn't the main office of the firm. And they had these just incredible qualifications. One had, I don't know, they had PhDs from places like Caltech and I don't know, but just really awesome backgrounds, just in all respects, and very impressive. But both of them, the two people I was talking to, didn't have any business. And so they went and were looking at all these articles I wrote, and like, why would you spend all the time doing that and stuff, and why? They were threatened by me because I was trying to hire people for their office and interviewing them. So they said some things that weren't that nice and after I got off the phone with them, I called a partner in another office that I was trying to build up that office. And he said something I'll never forget. He said, these are the kind of people that just wait around for business to come and think that it should come based on the quality of firm they're at and their background. And the thing is, it never comes. And that's why they're working for me. And this person was much younger than them and didn't have as good a qualification. So the ability to bring in business is hugely important and something very important. And this is a little bit about energy. And now I'm going to talk to you about energy and what that means. And access to energy is really one of the most important components to remaining employed in a law firm and the legal profession in general. And energy, without energy and the ability to have that, you're going to be ineffective, inefficient, and should be doing something different. And think about what energy means. Energy means the passion and desire to get up every day, the passion and desire to keep learning, the passion and desire to go out and get business, and all this energy and ability to get things done. And attorneys, more than factory workers or anybody, need this spirit because they're fighting for others. So you need to have a source of energy within you that is going to enable you to stand, to really do more than others, and to really be able to overcome obstacles and to fight through things that other people wouldn't, and to do things that other people would not. And that's what makes a good attorney so remarkable and have so much strength. So just in my excuse me, I'm losing my voice for some reason, but in my business, you look at a lot of recruiters and and you look at other people doing the kind of work I do, and you say, who has energy and who doesn't? And you can see in our company, for example, the energy to work so hard, keep getting jobs and to update our website and to push out content and to give these webinars and all this sorts of stuff is, a form of energy. And it's something that a lot of people and most people in this business don't have. And it's not to say that they're bad recruiters, but you have to tap into something where you believe what you're doing is important, because your job in this business is to fight for others. And to really tap into that energy. And you need more energy than other people in order to succeed. It's incredibly important. You cannot succeed in this business if you don't have energy. You need to really have a lot of energy to keep going. And you need to tap into that energy and believe what you're doing is important and be excited about it. And again, very few people are able to do this. If you look around wherever you're working and you see the energy levels of people, those people that aren't fired up and enthusiastic about what they're doing are never going to reach success in this business. They're never going to reach anywhere near the level that they should, because they simply do not have access to this energy that can make them successful. And hugely important point. So if you do not have access to this energy, you're never going to succeed. So you need to think about what that is. And how do you get that energy? And you get that energy most of the times by taking care of yourself, by surrounding yourself with people that have this energy, by avoiding negative influences, by avoiding drugs and alcohol and things that are pushing you down, that by listening to motivational speakers, by doing things and doing the best you can with everything, and really pushing yourself as hard as you can by tapping into things that work. Vacations can give you energy. There's so many things that can give you energy. Good relationships give you energy. A few years ago, one of my best friends and my mentor, his name is Chet Holmes. He was a best-selling business author. He wrote a book called The Ultimate Sales Machine, and just an all-around great guy. And then he was dying of leukemia, and he was in a hospital and undergoing all sorts of chemotherapy and other treatments. His hair was falling out. And he had all these diagnoses, and it was very sad. You could tell just based on what his family was saying in terms of diagnoses and everything, that he was going to be dead in the very near future. He had basically become skin and bones. He was weak and his voice was trailing off when he spoke. He had been bedridden so long, he was unable to walk. There were these machines that were blowing warm air under his sheets and things because his body didn't have the energy to warm itself. But what amazed me is I couldn't believe it. Even though he was bedridden, dying, and he was continuing to write these long articles. When I say long, I don't know, 2,500 words or something along those lines, about his sickness and how he was going to cure it and potential cures that were on the horizon. And then matters relevant to his profession, like what he believed in, how he could get people things about his business philosophies. And despite being close to death, his body basically died. Whatever was inside of him kept pouring out. And he had the energy, he couldn't even talk, but the energy to keep pushing forward with his ideas and things, even though he was sick. And he had always been doing motivational business training and it made him happy. And he enjoyed this his entire career and he was motivated by it. But again, he's confined to a hospital bed and he'd spend his days writing ideas and holding business meetings with people in his hospital room. When he's in intensive care, he was in a area, I'll never forget it. It was like this intensive care unit where I think there were like only 6 patients, and it was like there was a nurses station in the middle, and the nurses, so they could watch all 6 rooms at the same time. And he's in this position and he's holding meetings. And I met with him when he was still conscious, and he had business ideas. And so I met with him about 3 or 4 months before he was finally hospitalized for the final time in that room that I told you about, where it was the circular room. And he was inviting his friends and people to spend the night with him in the hospital, and because he needed like someone to talk to, and then also at night he needed someone to change his hospital gown for him because he would sweat very profusely all night, and then his hospital gown would get all sweaty. He needed someone to change it for him. And I stayed the entire night with him once. I guess his family needed a break or something and couldn't do it. But I was sleeping they had like a fold-out chair that turned into a bed, and he was up till 2:30 in the morning talking about business. And I couldn't keep my eyes open. And this is someone that is dying. And he was writing so much and asked me to read this stuff that I didn't even have the energy or time to read these long essays. And none of this was really that unusual. And his energy was helping him generate these ideas, even when he was close to death. And it came from within. He had found purpose and passion in his job, and that came through in everything he touched. And the purpose and passion he had made him much more effective at his job, and is one reason I believe that he made it so far in his life and in his profession. It was because of that passion and the drive. And again, if you think about attorneys, most attorneys do not have the passion necessary to be like this guy. A good attorney does, though, even when they're sick. A good attorney always has this passion and drive. They're able to tap into something, and they're able to really believe in what they're doing and be excited about it, never want to retire. Because they love it so much, and because they're tapped into something where they've gotten themselves to believe that it's something that really matters to them. And again, most factory workers want to be as far as possible from their work when they're ill. They don't want to think about it, and very important. The most successful people also just keep going. They don't give up, and they keep going no matter what people say about them. If you take a look at and I think I may have spoken about this last week, but you have most presidents, like they used to call Reagan like Teflon Ron or something, because you could say the meanest things to him and he would just smile and go about his way. And if you look at the kind of attacks that someone like Biden's receiving about his son, and just keeps pushing forward. Trump, same thing, keeps pushing forward. And all these presidents, it's Obama, same thing. So people that are settled just keep going. They have something that enables them to do well in all sorts of things. It's just something that a lot of people lack. A lot of people, once you criticize them, they'll start looking for a job. I see that all the time. Someone starts in our company, and then I have one negative thing to say with them, and they start looking for a new job. And it's like this in law firms. Someone gets a bad review and they start looking for a new job. You need to take everything that happens with a grain of salt. Think about what the best politicians do and follow something similar. I recently found a job for an attorney who was in her late 60s. And in her cover letter, she wrote something I couldn't believe. I've never billed less than 2,500 hours a year. And she was an attorney who'd retired and found herself bored and missing the practice of law. And I told her, and this is someone, I told her that I can't pay you what you were making in a large law firm. This is what she was told by a law firm. And she said, I'm not doing this for the money. I'm doing this because I love doing this. And all I think about is being a litigator. And she wasn't kidding. She was work most days at 7 a.m. and has a work ethic and level of energy that's incredible. And then I heard she even pulled an all-nighter. This is in their 60s. She's had this level of energy all her life, and this is something that made her successful and made her a partner in a large law firm. And these are the type of people that will advance in the legal world. And she, like my friend, is tapped into something that makes her incredibly effective at what she does. So this is something that you need to tap into if you want to be a really good attorney. You need to tap into this level of energy. And people with access to the energy and love of their jobs just keep going. They don't stop. They love it. And you see this with authors, like a lot of authors writing to their 90s. You see this with Henry Kissinger. I think he's 97 years old and still giving talks. I'm just coming back to him because I'm thinking of another example. So people with access to this energy have something really special. My grandfather, for example, was a well-known journalist, and he used to wrote about international relations and he used to give speeches weekly in a packed library until his mid-90s. And you can't make this up. If someone loves what they do and they're energized by it, the only way they will stop is by dying. My father, for example, is 87 or 88 years old, and he still writes books. He writes a couple of books every year, or several books, like 3 or 4 books every year, and he's got the energy to keep going. And work is not something that kills people, working too hard if you like what you're doing. It's something that keeps you energized and alive. And in contrast, for most people, practicing law is just doing a job. They'll watch the clock, they'll focus on their compensation, they'll write negative reviews about their firm on message boards, they'll talk negatively to other attorneys about their job, they'll go into the office of other attorneys and close the door so they can say things negative. They'll plot their escape all the time and think about where else they want to work, if they want to go in-house. And in general, these type of people don't care about what they're doing. And these types of attorneys in general don't do the best job they could. And they never succeed because they don't realize that in reality, advancement comes from loving what you do and being energized and empowered by it. And without passion for something, you really have nothing. You need that passion. And energy and passion are something you absolutely positively need to be as effective as you possibly can and be the happiest. You cannot succeed without having a lot of energy and passion. You just can't. These are 2 of the most important things that you need to tap into if you want to be very successful. And if you're not, you need to tap into that energy and passion. You need to find out, why don't you have this energy and passion? And again, nothing is more important than having access to this energy and being effective and really good at what you do. You find this passion by finding an area of law you're connected with. It could be a different practice area, but you need to have something that motivates you. And then you need to get access to the type of responsibility in your job that energizes you. So sometimes people may not like working in big law firms, even though they pay a lot of money, or they may not like working in smaller law firms because they don't like the practice area, the work, or I don't know. But whatever it is, you need to find something that energizes you. I remember when I first started recruiting in this position, I started finding myself getting up at 5 a.m. and working and that sort of thing. And I was very excited about the work. And in contrast, when I was practicing law, I wouldn't have gone into the office at 5 a.m. I was not that excited about it. So I found something that energized me. And think about you. It may not be practicing law, but you need to find something that energizes you and that keeps you going and makes you excited. And if you don't have that with the practice of law, then maybe just because you're working, you need to work with smaller clients in a firm where you feel more connected to the work, but you need to do something. And one of the ways that I believe this happens for a lot of people is when they start representing individuals or small companies and they feel a connection to the work. Or where you're able to work with people like yourself that treat you the way you want to be treated, and maybe not just very serious lawyers in an impersonal environment. But again, this is not to say that this doesn't work for a lot of people, but it doesn't. And there's just all sorts of ways to find this passion. And it's absolutely imperative for you to find that passion. There's really no other way you can do it. And if you don't have this, then you're really going to be in crisis. And this lack of passion is going to permeate every area of your life, from your health to your relationships, if you don't have it. So you need to figure out, how do you get this passion? Because if you don't have it, then your career is going to fizzle out, no matter how smart you are, no matter the quality of firm you're at, not even the quality of even if you're doing really good work, it's just not going to work. And not having that passion can kill you. What is the point of living if you don't like what you do and you don't have any passion for it? And I know lots of attorneys that were working in the largest law firms, and they have ended up doing things like becoming criminal attorneys in a storefront business. I know a girl from Harvard that started at Skadden and ended up doing that, and she's very happy. And again, I know attorneys from large law firms who left the practice of law to become nature guides and are very happy. And whatever you do that makes you happy and energizes you is something you should be doing. And it's very important, because if you do things that energize you and make you happy, then you're going to be much more effective than you would be if you're not doing things that make you happy, because you're just going to be in a much better position and have the energy to do well. You have the energy to work harder than other people can, and the ability to be more effective. And so it may not be practicing law, or it may be practicing law in the type of firm where you're working directly with clients or something else. But it takes energy to be a good attorney and to be good at anything. You need to be inspired and actually get something positive out of the work instead of stuff negative. And whether, and the examples I've given, whether you're a motivational speaker, an author, an attorney, a politician, a teacher, or a musician, the best people have a ton of energy, and they pour this energy into everything they do. Think about politicians. A politician is spending their life trying to continually run for re-election, and then getting shot down and being told, and by the other side, and being investigated and told there's something wrong with them, and getting all sorts of negative feedback. But they obviously are motivated by something very significant in order to put up with that. I certainly couldn't do it. It's a very hard job. But they're getting energy. Maybe it's when they win, or maybe it's the policy issues they're fighting for. But having that energy is incredibly important. And it's energy that carries them through the ups and downs and makes them successful when others are not. I can't emphasize this enough. If you're not finding energy in your job, you need to either find a different practice setting, or you need to find a new job or a different career, because there's absolutely no point in doing something that doesn't energize you. And you need to find a career or a job or a law firm or a practice setting, which it could be a larger firm or smaller firm, where you're excited and you want to grow. And if you don't have energy, this access to this energy, there's no point. It's the most important component necessary in the practice of law. And it's also a sign that you're happy and enjoying your job, that you see a future. And a lack of energy is a sign that you're not enjoying your job. And a less common pattern, but one that I really like watching, comes from the type of attorneys that started out at lesser firms and have lesser qualifications, but keep pushing themselves forward to become more and more successful. And these type of attorneys don't burn out. They may burn, and they just burn more brightly over time. That they keep getting more and more, they keep doing better and better. And they work hard, and they improve themselves and their skills, and they're persistent. They don't give up. And they get excited by their work and what they're doing, and they keep doing better and ultimately go very far. And the reason for that is they have access to this energy that other people don't. Maybe you start out in a smaller firm. Maybe you didn't get a job in the best law firm, but you do as well as you possibly can there. And then you're getting all sorts of positive feedback. And then with that positive feedback, you go into something else. And that's very important. And again, very few people are able to access this type of energy I'm talking about. And if you're able to do this, if you're able to be very good at your job and do all the things you need to, and you're able to access this energy, and then you're set. And anybody that has those two things will become very successful. You will become wealthy, maybe rich, and you'll become very successful. But you need to be in something where you're accessing that energy, and something where you're becoming skilled means you're getting better and better over time and continually open to learning. The reason I think that a lot of attorneys in large law firms leave is because they run out of this energy, and the law firm puts them on a treadmill. And after so many years of this, the attorney loses the ability to go on. They're feeling sapped of energy. Maybe it's the hours, maybe it's the mechanical type of practice, but it puts the attorney in a position where they want to escape and do something less taxing. And again, getting into a large law firm takes a lot of skill, and working there requires a lot of energy, but staying employed there requires even more energy. An attorney who stays employed in a large law firm needs to continually keep pushing forward and not give up. You need energy. My job, for example, requires a lot of energy. You get into good economies and bad economies, but you have to continue believing in what you're doing. A lot of recruiters get out of the business when the economy slows down, and then they try to come back later, they do something else. But you have to have the energy to keep pushing forward, because if you don't, when you lose that energy, your job will disappear. And you have to avoid burnout. And most attorneys can't do this. In order to stay employed, you need to remain excited and enthusiastic about what you're doing. You absolutely have to. And if you can't remain enthusiastic, then you're going to have a very difficult time getting clients. And you're also going to have a very hard time managing other people and winning. And enthusiasm, by the way, is a form of energy. And other attorneys and clients want attorneys and to be in the company of attorneys who are enthusiastic. Think about what you would want if you were going to an attorney. You would want someone that believes in you and that's excited and has new ideas and is continually improve themselves and is grateful for what they have and is continually able to do well. You wouldn't want the opposite, someone that's not excited and not tuned into something, that's avoiding work and all these things. And you're really skilled to the extent you have the ability and perseverance to remain enthusiastic about your work. And very few people can do this. Very few people are able to continually stay interested and enthusiastic about their work and not give up. And the reason a good attorney is so rare is because very few people have this ability to keep sustained energy and skill. And if people that have both of that, then the odds are that the person is likely to could be famous, possibly, the more energy they are. Look at the most famous attorneys and how much energy they have for what they're doing. And look at the wealthiest attorneys and how much energy they have. And if they don't have that, if they have these things, the odds are that they're going to have that so very shortly. And the skills, if you have the skills, like lots and lots of skills, if you have the academic background, that's a skill, then you should make the most of it. And you shouldn't take it for granted. This is what so many people do. They think that their academic qualifications or the firm they're at creates a condition where they have to stop growing or where they don't have to be enthusiastic if the employer's not right or the client's not right. Crazy. And if you have this kind of energy, you should do everything in your power to get the skills to become better and better. And again, this energy that I'm talking about, the best attorneys that go the farthest really are able to maintain this connection with the energy. And they do things, by the way, that energize themselves. They take vacations to recharge, or they exercise to keep themselves able to have time to give. They spend time with friends and family, or they read information about their practice area or the legal profession that interests them. And they read about what successful attorneys have done or what successful law firms have done. They meet with people and network that are likely to have information that can help them do well. And then they are able to build up energy in ways that they're able to take downtime so they have uptime and they're ready to work. And if an attorney understands the importance of all this and being connected to this energy, then they're able to keep going and succeeding. And so you really do need this. You need the energy and then the skill. And these two things really are all you need to be very successful practicing law. And again, most people aren't able to do that. And that's the reason that so many people don't succeed. And just a final point that I want to make, and I think it's important, is if you have this energy and this enthusiasm, you're going to be able to be successful really in anything. It doesn't have to be the practice of law. All you have to do is tap into something where you have that energy and enthusiasm. And very few people are able to do it. But if you can do it, you're going to be much more successful. Another thing that's very important, in addition to tapping, that is just the constant idea of improving, of letting things bounce off you and really keeping connected and surrounding yourself with the right people, and then doing everything you can to get better and better at your practice area and putting yourselves in environments where you can do well. And all these things, if you can do them, are going to make you very successful practicing law. And I think anybody can be successful. Another thing, the final thing that I want to add that I really think is important is when you, regardless of where you went to law school, regardless of how well you do, intelligence or whatever you think, the longer you do something, if you're connected to it and you're trying to do well, the better off you will be. So you will learn things if you just keep engaged that other people don't, and will be better than even smarter attorneys that may not be as enthusiastic. The other thing too is if you have this energy and that connected to stuff, you'll also be in a position where you're able to do very well and in lots of different practice areas. I know a lot of extremely successful people that do personal injury law, and I'm just bringing this up, not that this is something you should do, or trust in estates law that have these huge practices, or immigration law that have these huge practices. And a lot of times the people that do personal injury law, not all of them, and certainly not probably, but they have a chip on their back because they never got into big firms sometimes, or even got jobs. And then they started their own practices, but they end up doing very well. And they use that anger to really channel themselves into something where they're very effective and they have very good careers. And it doesn't matter in a lot of practice areas if you have the ability to out-reason people. It's really your passion and for the practice area that matters. So I'm going to take just a quick break just for a couple minutes. I'm going to grab a Diet Coke, and then when I come back, we'll take questions. It doesn't have to be about this webinar. I'll answer any questions you have about your career. Questions can be things about anything. It could be about your resume. It could be about switching firms. It could be about switching practice settings. It could be about getting a position at a law school, generating business, anything. But I'll certainly take any questions that people have, and then once I have those, or once we do the questions, we'll come back, and I'll just come back in a minute or two and do the questions. So thanks. Okay, so this first question, and by the way, just so everyone understands, if any questions you have, they're always anonymous. So if your name is displayed on Zoom because you're logged in or something, I will just cut and paste the question. I won't show the question. Okay, so this question: I'm a junior associate who recently lateraled to a satellite office of a larger firm. My overall experience has been positive. I've been able to bill a significant amount of hours, go to the office every day, and have gotten repeat work from numerous partners I've worked with. I initially felt I had a very good relationship with my peers. However, I was assigned to a project with another peer who also joined the firm and is very well liked. This peer that I'm working with has very little interest in doing the work and has left almost everything to me, but is eager to slap their name on any work product that I draft. When they have sent me any work to review, their work isn't properly formatted, riddled with errors, and in some cases appear to copy-paste my prior drafts. I want to avoid problems and not have conflict with a well-liked peer. However, it has been very disruptive to the workflow and left me feeling resentful. How should I deal with the situation? Okay, that's a great question. So one of the ways you can deal with it is it is a good point that you're talking about not getting into conflict with someone. I don't know if the person is senior or not, but if you said that it's a peer that's recently joined the firm, there are a couple ways you can deal with that. One is if you have any partners or senior people which could be friends possibly, or acquaintances, you could basically bring it up and say, what would you do in this case without bringing the person's name up? So you could say that, and they'll figure it out. The next thing you could do is when you write down your hours, you should basically, in the description of the work, describe that you reviewed the person's work, and then just write fix formatting, typos, etc. And don't do it in a way that's hostile. But what will happen is partners always review your hours, and they'll review the hours of that person. So I'd write that up. Then the next thing I would do when you're doing all the work is I would also write very good descriptions, like very detailed descriptions of the work that you did in your hours. And then what I'm betting will happen is the person doing this probably won't write as detailed descriptions. The person you're competing with won't write as detailed descriptions. And let me just see here. And then it'll look like you did all the work. And so that's how I would recommend doing that. I think you don't want to run to someone and say this is happening, but someone who's doing this is doing it out of their own insecurity. Whatever's happening on the matter that you're working on, they'll do the same thing with other people. What's interesting too is a lot of times these are the sorts of issues many times that happen in the background when people are moving firms. So a lot of times people will move firms because they get in trouble for doing this sort of stuff. So whatever this pattern is, it will carry over into this person's other jobs, other people that they work with, and other people will start talking about it. In order to protect yourself politically, you want to be very careful about not saying anything about this person to other people, and whatever they're doing will ultimately get around, and other people will figure it out, other people that work with them, and so forth. But you want to be very careful about talking negatively about others in the firm, because if you do, then this person will come after you. The big idea here is this: you keep your ego out of everything and be very careful, and just be very careful about not trying to get credit and that sort of thing. And the better you do with that, the better off you'll be. The reason this is an important lesson is because what happens to everything is that if you start getting annoyed by this sort of thing, then you'll start getting annoyed by all sorts of other small things that are happening, and that will harm you. I had something happen that was very funny. And in the second firm I worked at, I had a friend from high school that owned a kind of an internet company that was started up this business. And I started doing work for him. And then he started referring all these people to me. And then they started referring people to me. And in order to bring these people in as clients, I needed to have a partner sponsor basically be the person that would oversee the work, and then I would do all the work, just a responsible partner. And so the partner would actually get credit for the work. And so I started bringing in like all these clients. I was only like a second or third year associate, and the firm started circulating these things saying this guy's brought in this fifth internet client in 6 weeks, and this is amazing. But they were all my clients. And so it was very funny. And this guy had been a partner at this firm for 10 or 15 years. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't say, hey, these were my clients, because this partner is someone that I needed to be on the good side, and he would know that he was taking credit for it. So why would I want to take credit for something, even though it was mine, when to not say anything would actually be much more politically advantageous than saying anything? And that's what I did. So you just need to be careful with that sort of thing. And this is the kind of stuff that happens in law firms all the time. But everyone knows people that play those games, and it's not something that you should end up worrying about too much. Let me just see. Okay, so there were a couple questions I didn't get to last week because I had to end the webinar early. So if you were asked some questions last week and I didn't get to them, I'm going to answer a few of them now. So let me just see here. And then there are a bunch of questions from this webinar too. they said, but I do want to answer these people that were last week. I've heard that going to insurance defense is a career killer. I was in destruction practice before I changed states to be with my partner, and hard finding a job in a new state. I ended up taking a job in an insurance defense firm. What is the best way to transfer out of a non-insurance defense role? It feels like I have a giant black mark on my resume. I've been in this firm for over a year and a half. Okay, well, the good news is instruction is a really good practice area. So you need to find, and it is not insurance defense. And so you can probably, if you try hard enough, meaning apply to lots of places that do construction related work, I bet you could get a job just with unsolicited resumes. So I just want to make a couple points here for everyone that's on the call about what's the problem with insurance defense. There's really no problem with insurance defense as a general rule. The good news is that if you learn this, it's pretty easy to start a firm doing it, representing insurance companies, and you can actually have firms represent. You can pretty much have a really good career doing this. And there's also a lot of employment stability. But the drawbacks are, the bad news is that the salaries are lower and it's limiting. And so I'll just talk a little bit about that to the extent that it's limiting and why it is. And it's really pretty easy to understand, but I'll just explain it real briefly because this is an important point. And a lot of people on this call may be in insurance defense or considering going to insurance defense. So the reason insurance defense can be problematical is your insurance companies want to save money, and so they hire firms to defend them that are inexpensive. And in 95% of cases, or 98% of cases, they settle. The insurance company settles. So really all they're looking to do is respond to a complaint, just do some discovery and respond to some discovery and just do that. And so it's really, and a lot of the settlements are based on predefined values that there's subscriptions that people that they get. This is actually interesting for everyone on the call to understand, but there's subscriptions that attorneys get that show the typical settlements. And so everything's pretty much laid out in advance. So that's the simplest part. But the simplest part is that when you're doing insurance defense, essentially what you're doing is you're representing by default, by proxy, you're representing individuals. And those individuals are basically paying auto insurance and so forth, or home insurance and home insurance, et cetera. And so what that means is it just means that essentially there's just not, the work quality is not as good and often rushed. And one of hundreds of cases a person may have. So it's actually interesting, an attorney may have. So that's how insurance defense works. And then unlike if you're doing commercial litigation, which is a step up, commercial litigation is representing companies, defending companies. And when you're defending companies, the companies have more money to spend. More money to spend. So it could be small companies to larger. So that's kind of how that whole thing works. It's just important. That's why insurance can be a little limiting for people if you go into that, because you're learning how to defend insurance companies that are essentially representing individuals where they're not going to do very good work. And so things that would happen in commercial litigation are doing a lot of research, making sure that the company is well defended, doing a lot of the best work possible, to the extent when you get up to the largest law firms, this is the kind of work they do. And that's why they don't do insurance defense, because there's just not a lot of money involved. Some more. So this one is for this week. And I hope that helps about insurance defense. Insurance defense is actually very interesting. It's not a bad practice area, and it actually is very interesting. But okay, if you're mid-career and can't change your law school at this point, your previous work history, what can you do going forward to either hone your skill set to get into a better company or industry? Okay, the law school you went to really doesn't matter. The law school mainly matters when you're in law school or you're in law school. And the reason for that is because it is the only thing, the only way that employers can evaluate new attorneys. Future attorneys. We take 27,000 people that are graduating each year. So you'll have, I don't know what the number might be, but you'll have maybe 3,000 at top 10 law schools, et cetera. I don't know what the number is. It's probably more than that, but you get the idea. 10% at top 10 law schools, like 10, 15%. And so as you move down the upper levels, these are going to be the first choice because it's all they have for the choice with the best grades for the best firms. So that's all there really is to it. And with the law school. So law school is not that important when you get out. What's really important, what matters is your employment record. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a couple of things, and it's the same thing. And this is actually really good advice, and I hope it helps everyone on this call. One of the things that I do, and I spend a good amount of time doing each week, is we have a product called, it's reverse recruiting. I'm not selling it to you right now. It's something that we offer to attorneys where we do their resume and help them apply to firms if we're not working with them. But the lesson that I've gotten from this of people that aren't getting jobs, or interviews, and this is just something I see over and over again, is they're usually doing this. Most people try to make themselves, and you may be doing this as well, try to make themselves look like a bunch of different things. So they may say job one, I did trust and estates and litigation. I'm just giving you an example. Litigation, then they say job two. And this is why people don't get jobs. And this is why I'm telling you this. Job two, they might say corporate and real estate. And then current job, IP and insurance. I'm just giving you an example. So the reason that this doesn't work is that all employers are looking for, like law firms, all law firms just want 90% of law firms, other than solo practitioners and very small law firms in small markets, law firms all want specialists. And the specialist means someone that's experienced doing essentially one practice area, and preferably one practice setting. So what does that mean? It means a practice setting is like a law firm, in-house, something like that, law firm, government, whatever, and preferably law firm. So this is, by the way, this is the number one thing that prevents you from getting hired. And it's something that, unfortunately, whatever the reason is, no one is doing, or most people don't do. And so I review resumes all day, and I don't care where you went to law school. I don't care the quality of your firm really that much. If you're doing one thing, then you're always going to get interviews, and you have to look like you're focused on doing one thing. All your past experience looks like you're focused on one thing. You have to have really a lot of focus. And the biggest faux pas is the biggest error is combining transactional and litigation. That's a real problem. And then, which should be like corporate and real estate with litigation. But then just the other faux pas would be just combining things like IP and real estate. People do this stuff all the time. The problem with this is, and the reason this is a bad idea and can hurt you is because if you're doing this, the clients want specialists, law firms want specialists, and specialists are committed to something, and that commitment means that the attorney is likely to be good, to stick around if they're given that type of work. And also be better at that practice area than someone doing lots of things. The idea is Michael Jordan. So Michael Jordan, one of the greatest basketball players ever, great basketball player, then decides to play, for whatever reason, decides to play basketball or decides to play baseball at the top of his career. It makes no sense and didn't go well. So you don't see athletes most of the time they don't play soccer and football, even though they're different. So they do one thing. So clients want specialists because a specialist is someone that they can go to that they know is going to be good. For example, if you had a heart problem, you wouldn't go to a general practitioner, or you wouldn't want to go to someone that did orthopedics and heart work. You would go to someone who had done neurology, then had been a psychiatrist, and then had been a heart doctor. You would want someone that had that type of experience. Clients are the same way. So if you start trying to look like you do a bunch of things, everyone's going to be turned off and not like that. It's a bad thing. So you need to figure out how to make your resume look like that, or you need to de-emphasize your last experience and just call yourself an associate or something, and just associate in a mid-sized firm or something along those lines. The big one that everyone's doing now too, it's funny, is everyone's trying to make themselves look like data privacy attorneys, even though they really don't have any experience doing it. And so all this stuff hurts you. Like, you have to look like a specialist. This is some of the most valuable advice I can possibly give you, is that the more you look like a specialist, the more you're going to get hired. It's more important than where you went to law school. It's more important than anything. And if you don't have that, then all you need to do is you need to make your most recent experience look like you have very strong experience in one practice area. And if you're able to do that, you're going to be much better off than people that don't. Let me see here. Okay, so this is a question. I don't know if it's a pill stemmer, but so the idea is that the most important thing, more important than your education, more important than the quality of employers, more important than your practice setting, just looking like a specialist. Okay, how accurate is the DISC assessment in determining what practice areas you should be in? Any recommendation was mostly an SC in the DISC assessment. I generally tend towards stability, predictability, but in one case is on motion work because I like the drafting aspect of litigation. However, I find parts of litigation like deposition very stressful. I'm also not a math science mind. I find certain aspects. Yeah, so unfortunately, I can't really answer that question. I did design a DISC task on the BCG website, but I think the idea is you need to find work that appeals to your personality. If you find depositions and oral arguments very stressful, that doesn't mean that you have to do that as part of your job. In large law firms, there are always litigators that are partners that have never done a trial. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And there are people that do a lot of writing behind the scenes. And so that could just be what you do. And you don't necessarily have to have a math science mind to do transactional work. Now, certain people that have those math science minds often really like doing transactional work. And that's important to be able to do that. But certainly not everyone can do that type of work. And if you can't, that's okay. But it sounds to me like you can be a briefing attorney. There's people that do very well in that. There's also, this is interesting, and I would just bring this up. You can work as an attorney in a law firm, but you can also, this is what clerks do inside of federal courthouses or state courthouses. They're just very good at writing opinions and that sort of thing. So there's lots of jobs you can do with those skills. I was in a law firm once, and they were when they had the most difficult legal issues and things and needed the best briefer. There was a guy that had gone to Yale Law School that was married to one of the associates in the firm. And they used to give him these very difficult briefing assignments, and he would do a great job on it. I think they paid him a lot of money. I don't know. It was a few decades ago, but I think they were paying him at least a few $100s an hour. There's lots of jobs like that you can do where you can take advantage of your skills. So just because you don't like depositions and oral argument doesn't mean that you have to do that. You can always do different types of things. And so when there's something you're interested in your job, but not interested in necessarily in doing in the long term, you should always look for aspects of aspects of the job that match what you want to do. Okay, let's see here. Thank you for these valuable webinars. I've been told to expect a job offer. What are the things to keep in mind when reviewing an offer, and what are your salary negotiation tips? Okay, that's a good point. People negotiate salaries all the time, and that's okay. You can certainly negotiate your salary, but you have to be careful a lot of times. So sometimes I've seen, and again, this is not all the time, but I've seen people lose jobs over lose job offers over trying to negotiate salaries. I've seen you have to be careful, but people negotiate salaries all the time. If you're negotiating a salary and you think the firm really wants you, then you do have room to negotiate, but you should never try to ask for more than the law firm is paying other people. So never ask for more than the law firm is paying other people. And then if you are asking for a salary, if you are asking for a certain salary, you need to give some sort of justification. You need to say something along the lines of, this is what I'm making. I'm trying to move someplace. It's just some place where my salary will increase. I don't know, something along those lines you need to say. And then just be careful about that. A lot of people blow offers and things by negotiating too much. And you also need to be aware that these sorts of things can really lead to ill feelings if it's the wrong firm. Ill feelings are often, and just to give you some perspective, ill feelings are most likely to happen in smaller firms, not mid-sized firms. And in smaller firms or closely held firms, closely held meaning owned by one or two people, something along those lines. So you just need to be very careful about that, who you're negotiating with. The salary negotiation tips are basically, when you negotiate a salary, you try to ask what others are making. If you're asking for something, you want to say what you're making. You often want to ask what the salary increases are for last year, how that works. You want to ask about bonuses, how that works. And you want to just get as much information as you can. But you need to be very careful many times with small law firms. The problem with small law firms is they're more financially more precarious. And so because they're financially precarious, they will be not like it when you negotiate the salary. So you could often be the first out. So it's very dangerous many times when you are getting a high salary from a small law firm, because that may not last. And so you just need to be very aware of that and careful. But yeah, when you receive an offer, really there's a couple other things. The faster you accept the offer, the better. If you're not accepting an offer very quickly, that's going to leave a bad taste in the firm's mouth. I've always noticed when people don't accept offers quickly that they typically don't end up staying around. So that's just another thing to be aware of and very careful of, that if you're not accepting an offer right away, that's going to leave a bad taste in the firm's mouth, possibly. So you need to be careful. Also, you're often better off talking to the HR people about the terms if you can. That's one reason it's very good to be on good terms with them, to call them up and say, I'm very excited about the offer. I just had a few questions, ask you off the record. Would it be possible? Do you think this would be possible? What would you do in my situation? That sort of thing. And getting a good dialogue and with HR people can help you a great deal, because they often tell you, like, this is not negotiable. This is, I've seen them do this and that sort of thing. Whereas if you're talking to a partner or someone you may be working for, it's a little bit more confrontational, and they're more likely to negotiate with you very hard. And it'll also give you a sense, and you may be intimidated, but you'll also get a sense of what it's like working at the firm. You'll get a sense of how flexible they are and all these different sorts of things, and maybe how much they want you. And if you don't get that sort of information, it can be very difficult. Okay. So I talked a little bit today just about trying to broaden your knowledge and things. So the answer to that is there's courses that show how to get business. There's courses There's courses and there's CLE and CLE and other things in the legal field, in the legal field that for people in different practice areas. And so there's just all sorts of things that you can do, practice areas, settings, and that can help you. But the idea is that to go into something probably that you're interested in and not necessarily something you're not interested in. So what that means is that if you're interested in something, meaning you may be interested in, I'm just giving you a fun example, cannabis law, because cannabis is legal in California, or you may be interested in data privacy and something that you're interested in, preferably though, something that complements your own practice or something that can teach you a lot. So going to classes that can help you how to get business or how to network or whatever, if you're interested in them, you're probably going to get a lot more out of those classes than if you're doing something you're not interested in. I always recommend doing things that you're interested in as opposed to things you're not. And that's going to help you a lot more than other sorts of things that you may do. So I would recommend doing things you're interested in just because you're going to get more out of them than not. If I was a litigator, the last thing in the world I would do would be take a class or something about trends in corporate law or just things that are likely to help you. And there's all sorts of things. There's like weekends and seminars and webinars and things, but anything that kind of teaches you stuff is very useful. So that's how I'd recommend doing that. Okay. So this question, I understand that achieving wealth and fame requires hard work, but how do you strike a balance between dedicating yourself to your legal career while maintaining a fulfilling personal life? Do you have any tips? Yeah. So your personal life, by the way, and this is something that's important, in the personal life of the best attorneys often crosses over into their work life. So what does that mean? So that means that your friends are lawyers, your friends are clients, you entertain your family with clients and other people or people that you're networking with that could lead to business. And so that's how attorneys do that. And then you can get credit for your hours, sometimes your hours for client development with a firm, and you do things that way. And that's actually can be very enjoyable. Now, is that to say that you can't spend time with your family and stuff? No, of course not. But this is what it means. It means that your personal life is going to have to will basically bleed over into your work life. And I also say that a lot of it is also about working smart. So working smart means putting your time into things where you're likely to, your time into stuff where you're likely to get the most benefit. So a lot of times you don't have to work and be in the largest firm, and the work is hard to do as well financially. A lot of times you can do very well financially by being in a practice area or doing some sort of type of transaction that a lot of people are not doing. I met one time one of the wealthiest attorneys I ever met when I was young. I had this practice where he was driving around or getting driven or ridden around in a van and doing bonds and things for different towns around Michigan, doing bond issuances, and very successful. And so there's always different kinds of niches you can do like that. And that can be is often working smart. And he certainly worked hard during the week, but I don't know how it can be done. Okay, let's see here. Someone made a remark about my hair. Yeah, I'm definitely going to get a haircut soon. Okay, so here. Harrison, I'm a young attorney recently started my own practice. Can you share some specific strategy that attorneys with no business carefully use to get clients in private practice? Okay, so that's a good question. The first thing is if you want to get clients, there's some of the practice areas are trust and estates. The first thing is you try to focus if possible. And by focusing, that means one practice area. So that's one of the most important things. The other is do a consumer-facing practice area. So that means that could be personal injury. It could be trust and estates. It could be, what else? Immigration. I don't know. There's a bunch of other ones, but things where you are representing individuals. So I hope that makes sense. Things where you're representing individuals. And so those are consumer facing practice areas. You should not try to do work. You should avoid working for companies because companies are not going to hire you. It would be dumb. If they do, it's not going to last long. Consumer facing practice area. The reason you want to do a consumer facing practice area is because consumer facing practice areas, the clients are not sophisticated and don't care about, they're not going to care about your experience. So it's funny, what do a lot of attorneys, what do a lot of people do that want to have very successful practices? A lot of times they'll go out. I know one immigration attorney that went out and paid to have his picture taken with presidents and former presidents and important people. But it's just the consumer-facing practice areas are the most important. I know a guy I was looking in an office the other day in Malibu, and there was this attorney that was, the landlord said was like 25 years old or something, or not 25, it's 30 years old, and had this trust in estates practice for 4 or 5 years and had just purchased a $5 million house in cash. So he's obviously doing very well. I don't know how that works exactly, but I've seen a lot of attorneys do very well in a lot of these consumer-facing practice areas. That's definitely something that you can do. So those are some of the things that I would say. And then just how to get business. How to get business is a whole other thing, but trust and estates people will put on dinners and lunches and invite people, will advertise it. They will set up websites with articles, they'll attend events, or they'll join associations. They'll get work from more successful attorneys. There's all sorts of things you'll do. And the idea is if you put yourself out there, you will get the work. I know so many people in these types of practice areas that have been very successful. The only thing I would say about something like personal injury is it's going to take you a long time to get paid. Most of the time, trust in the states, you get paid very quickly. Immigration, you get paid very quickly. Same thing with family law. And all of these people need attorneys. I'll just tell you, when I first started, I tried to start very quickly a law practice, and I had plenty of people coming in that were family law people that needed, and different things, personal injury and so forth, right off the bat, that wanted an attorney. So oftentimes just being the only attorney in a market can make a big difference. Then the other thing often is go to markets where there's not a lot of attorneys. And that can help as well. The idea would be small markets, towns, etc., where there's not a lot of competition. And then you become the only person that they're looking for. Every year or two, not even every 6 months or so, we always get calls from attorneys in small markets where they might be the only market attorney within 50 miles and stuff. And they want us to find someone to take over the practice, most of the time for free. So there's so many small markets that you can go into where you can potentially be able to get your clients. And it's not that hard, but you have to be, the big thing is you have to be seen. And these would be like how to set up a trust or something. Okay, that's a great question about opening in your own market. Here's this next question here. Someone who's just starting on the legal field and curious about the potential impact of technological advancements and automation and the ability to bring in businesses and attorney. How can attorneys stay relevant and leverage these advancements to their advantage? Okay, there's a bunch of things that you can do that actually would be very smart for attorneys that attorneys don't do. And what's interesting too is that every time there's new technological advancements and things. I remember when the technological advancement was a law firm having a website, and then it was having contact us forms, and then it was that sort of thing. There's some things that a new attorney can do about bringing in business, especially if you have your own firm. So it's chatbots, which you can use API to go to, I don't know, ChatGPT or something. I don't know how it would work exactly, but you can use chatbots. The other one would be a lot of drafting and contracts, plus contracts can be done with I don't know, with AI related tools. The same thing with Bard, ChatGPT. Perfect. Sorry about that. But Bard, ChatGPT, just forgot to turn my screen back on. So a lot of that can be done that way. And then the other thing, of course, would be ads and et cetera can be written and letters, all that sort of thing. And so what'll happen with all this stuff, and it just what happens with all new forms of technology, is that the biggest thing to remember is that what'll happen is that younger people, typically when this stuff happens, younger people start doing tasks, start doing using the technology, and older people don't. And then the older people take business. The younger people take business from the younger people. Younger people, businesses from older. So that's pretty much how things work. So that's the biggest thing you should remember. And so that's one of the advantages that younger attorneys have when new technology is coming out. One example would be when social media came out, like a lot of people that may have understood websites before then never understood social media. And so then all these businesses came in and capitalized on things like Facebook and ads on Twitter and Instagram. And then a lot of businesses that weren't doing that didn't do as well. And the point with that is, why do people make so much money? Or why does companies like Facebook and Twitter and all these businesses and Instagram make so much money? It's because they're able to make people even more money. So businesses flock to them. As a new attorney or a young attorney, you can definitely take advantage of a lot of the stuff, because older people will not take advantage of it. And so that is something that, and they won't even want to understand it, because they'll be stuck in kind of an old business model that they'll continue doing until they retire or they're forced to change. So it's actually a very good opportunity, if I was a young attorney, to go in and learn all this stuff, because most people are stuck in a business model. And what'll happen, and what happens to them, is they're people that are stuck in old business models will slowly see their competitive edge go away, and other people will move in. So if you can do contracts and things, what that means is you're lower cost, and possibly better work. And then what that means is more clients, and plus more clients, because clients will see the cost so much cheaper if you're doing this, and that will mean and will be more likely to use you as opposed to others. That's what's cool about it. You know, one of the things that I saw that was interesting with the internet and call centers, before call centers were cost prohibitive to have them internationally. Once people started using those, the people that had international call centers became more profitable because the wages were lower in other countries and all that sort of thing. So it's interesting. This is a fun question. So what would you recommend in terms of medical support, like vitamins, hormones, and so forth, for energy? Yeah, that's a good question. So there's a lot of schools of thought for that. There's things like, there's supposed to, I think magnesium, vitamin D for energy. Then there's, I don't know what else is there, energy. And then there's NAD, which is also, you can, for life extension. Then I'm just trying to think of the other. So there's testosterone for men, which gives energy, among other things. And people can get, then there's a couple other things that are supposed to be really good. There's pregolone. And what is the other one called? DHEA. There's a bunch of things like that. And there's also smart drugs, which a lot of people don't talk about, but a lot of people like in Silicon Valley and stuff use, which are Mondafil, which I think you can order online. It's basically like a form of light speed, but obviously I don't take it. I'm not like jumping up and down, but it's something that it's like a big drug in Silicon Valley that people use for productivity. There was also an article in the Wall Street Journal a couple of days ago. I think maybe it was on Tuesday or Monday. I don't remember, but there's also microdosing, which a lot of people are talking about. And that is, it could be mushrooms, which contains mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms, LSD, and there may be other stuff. I don't need to remember. But mushrooms, which is a psilocybin. So there's all sorts of people that are experimenting with this stuff, including, there's ketamine. I don't know, ketamine. You can read about, there's a Musk and Sergey Brin, and all these people. Anytime you're hearing about very important people or productive people using this sort of stuff, it's probably worth investigating or thinking about. This is David Asprey, I think, that talks about that a lot. And he's the bulletproof guy, those diets. So that can help. So a lot of these things could help you. And I'm not certainly going to tell lawyers on a call to use illegal drugs, but I'm telling you what I've read in the Wall Street Journal. And so that stuff is all stuff that can, that and I've certainly heard I've heard a lot of people talk about this. So this stuff can all be very helpful. This is over the counter. This is over the counter. And all this stuff is over the counter. Same thing. The other one is, and then this would be prescription. This would be prescription where people order it internationally and online international pharmacies. And I'm happy to provide this information. I just don't want to get in trouble, but I'm just letting everyone know what's popular. And this is very popular in Silicon Valley. And it's basically like a form of a stimulant that, whatever, that you can still sleep on and stuff. And then, and I think that would be a prescription. And then all this stuff is probably, I think ketamine you can get with prescription, but all this other stuff is illegal. So this is illegal, but you can probably get it somewhere, prescription. So a lot of people are using this stuff to make them smarter or to, I don't know, but this stuff can definitely help people. But I think the biggest one that I think is really important, the biggest thing is exercise and diet. So I know that for me personally, like I exercise every day. Even if you can just go for a walk every day or run every day, some daily exercise. And then it's interesting. You have with exercise, you have cardio, which I think is very important. Cardio, very important, but because it releases stress hormone or releases relaxing hormones and whatever, I don't know what it's called, but relaxing hormones, and just can make you more focused. And then there's also lifting or stress, or I don't know what it'd be called, lifting or resistance. And there's a lot of people that are like Jerry Seinfeld and other people that think this is the most important. Some people think this is the most important. And I think it's important too. So all these things are the most important. I do know that a lot of the most successful attorneys that I know manage to do this stuff. One of the most successful attorneys I know in LA, he's got a stand-up desk where he's walking. A lot of the most successful attorneys I know have always made this kind of part of their routine. So that can be very important. And then there's other stuff too that people swear by, which is like meditation. It could be like 20 minutes a day or something like that, right? Which is usually transcendental. I mean, you can learn all this stuff. So all this stuff is really important because it gives you perspective and you can grow doing this stuff. I'm not certainly recommending that people get into all this stuff, but these are things that people do to get energy, to get more insight, to help them in their careers. And I think that at least investigating and learning about those different things are important. But this is something that for me, I believe has always worked. And then the only other thing just to go in with diet is avoiding too many sugars, and then fasting, which means not eating for a long period of time, which would be every 12 hours or something. Just things like that are things that people do. And then some people even, I don't do this, but I remember at different points in my life, I've done live food diet. And when I've done that, I've had like more energy and stuff than I've ever had. So those are things that you can investigate. But what I would say is that just as you are trying to make sure that you're doing really good work, you need to take care of your body and your mind in order to do all this to be as effective as possible. And I do think that stuff's important. Here, let's see this one. These are great questions today too, by the way. Thank you everyone who's asking them. Is it possible to switch from commercial litigation to employment law? Yes, it's definitely possible to switch from commercial litigation to employment law. The reason is you're typically representing companies when you're doing employment law, and the thought processes and things can be learned. So that's one of the few practice areas where it's possible to make the switch. So there's a few drawbacks. The commercial litigation is more prevalent, but it's also harder. But it's harder to get a job with the best firms. Prevalent, meaning there's more of these people than there are employment law. The problem with employment law, which is a problem, but also not a huge problem. So what happens with employment law is people that do employment law, typically there's more demand for specialists in that, because there's fewer employment lawyers, fewer employment defense lawyers than there are commercial litigators. So if I had my choice between representing a employment defense attorney or a commercial litigator, then I definitely would want to represent an employment lawyer, because there's fewer of them. They get more interviews, and their qualifications are not as important. But the problem with employment law is typically the billing rates are often lower for employment law, even in large law firms. And the reason the billing rates are lower is because companies have a lot of, just like insurance companies have a lot of ongoing litigation, and they have negotiation leverage. Companies also have a lot of ongoing employment work, and so they can afford to push the billing rates down. So there's work and can afford to push the billing rates down. So there's that to worry about, to be concerned about. So that's how it works with employment law and versus commercial litigation. So employment law is actually you're more placeable, and typically things like seniority don't matter as much. It's also much easier to bring in business, because all you need to do is find a company that gets sued, and it's also you're more likely to be employable without business. And it's also much easier to go in-house, because large companies always need employment lawyers. So employment's actually, if you're a litigator, can be a very good practice area, but ultimately, unless you're doing class action defense, which is what a big firm like, I don't know, Mayer Brown, for example, would do something like that, like a big firm like that. Unless you're doing something like that, class action defense, that ultimately the amount of money that you make is going to be lower for the most part. But one other thing that's important to mention about employment law is it's interesting. This Quinn Emanuel actually started out as an employment law firm. John Quinn would cold call different companies that got sued and ask them if you do their employment work. And then when you did a good job on that, started asking for their commercial litigation work. And so it's a good practice area. And then when they wanted to do even higher paid work, they stopped doing employment completely. And all their employment people ended up leaving, whether it was volunteer or not, I don't know. Okay, let's see here. Just great questions today. A lot of questions. Okay, I started at a smaller firm that was not a good fit, and ultimately lost my position a few months after graduating. I had almost no work at the firm, and they had very little offer, which I only realized after summaring with them and joining after graduation. I was fortunate to join an office of a larger nationwide firm where I bill in a substantial number of hours. Okay, great. I feel invigorated with the amount of work available, but want to make sure I don't burn out. I can keep the work flowing, and I don't know if it is a mistake to seek out a larger firm or perhaps a clerkship 1 or 2 years down the line. Okay, so a federal clerkship is like a federal district court clerkship or appellate clerkship. It's never a mistake. It's never like within the first 5 years of practice. And the first 5 years or so. It's never a mistake, really. So you can definitely do that. Seeking out a larger firm is probably not a mistake. So the benefits of a larger firm are typically benefits of a larger firm. our firm are going to be, will typically be larger clients. The drawbacks are going to be advancement and then career stability are two of the big ones, meaning you may have to leave and not be able to stay there. Those are the biggest ones. I would say if this firm has 250 hours a month that they're able to give you, that's a really good sign, and you're probably learning a lot. And then the drawbacks, those are some of the drawbacks. So if it was me, I probably would, if you feel you can go to a larger firm, a much more prestigious firm, then it's almost always a good idea, because it's very hard to move to a more prestigious firm, and you are going to learn a different a way of practicing, and it is going to give you a little bit more stability in your resume, it's going to give you better experience, probably maybe with better attorneys that do things well. But you need to be very careful about doing that, because you may be getting very good. You may have a lot of future where you're at, and so that could be a very good thing. I hope that answers your question. Real estate attorneys, and we're back to get a health coaching certificate. I'm glad you're coaching stressed out lawyers, because there's definitely a lot of those. And that's actually anyone who's interested. I've never done it, but I think it can be, this is coaching, but I think that's a good business. I've seen people have very good careers doing that. I'm a new associate. How can I determine if partners like my work? And if they do not, back to me, some partners like my work, but I never hear from them again. Yes, that's a good question. So partners do not have, so it's that way with a lot of younger people. Like younger people expect praise and positive feedback, but you're just not going to get it a lot of times in the firm. The only feedback you'll get is, and the best feedback you'll get is more work. And that's basically them saying that they like you. If someone gives you more work, then that means that they like you a lot. And that's really all you need. So just if you're getting positive feedback, then the firm likes you and you're doing a good job, and there's nothing really to worry about, just getting more work. And then the other one is no bad reviews. But sometimes law firms will give junior associates bad reviews just to make them improve. And then when you get into the mid-level, they'll start being better because they're more profitable. And this is how that works. But I wouldn't worry about getting a lot of positive feedbacks when you're young. How do you deal with your peers, colleagues who drain your energy? For instance, they can't help you even when you take a vacation, but expect you to step in and do their work when they're always on vacation. Okay. How do you deal when they ask you for your work product for substitute work? Would you consider this plagiarism? Sometimes you think they'll use it to your values. Wait a minute. Let me see, I can't help you even when you're on vacation. Okay. I think this is a good question. I think that this is just an issue of people treating you unfairly and taking advantage of you and not giving you credit and just being all in all unpleasant people to work with. So the first one is you try to avoid those people. So avoid those people if possible. And that means forming alliances and getting work from other people that you want to work with. And I think I gave a response earlier that to the extent your ego gets involved and that sort of stuff, you just want to do what you can to try to avoid those people. That's what I would do. I guess I'll want to avoid those people. You want to be careful. So these are sorts of things you always have short-term goals, and then you have long-term goals. But your long-term goal is always going to be to survive, not make enemies, and be thought and have a good reputation, that sort of thing. Good reputation, and this means stay employed. And then your short-term goal should always be to maintain your sanity, then not get involved in unnecessary conflicts, not upset others, not get upset. Then it would be, and then not get more work, and that sort of thing. So if your short-term goals, these are good short-term goals, then your bad short-term goals are going to be things like protecting your ego, So I'm worrying about petty things, which should be like parking, bonus differential, all that sort of differentials, bad looks from people, whatever that is. So you always want to put things in like a category of what is a good short-term goal, what is a bad short-term goal, and just realize that if you start emphasizing bad short-term goals, it's going to hurt you. So this is something that a lot of people do. They feel like they have to protect their ego each day. They feel like they have to get a one-up on people each day. They feel like they have to whatever. And if you start having bad short-term goals, it's going to hurt you. So all these sorts of things where people are bothering you, that these involve bad short-term goals, which is really related to protecting your ego. Now, if this firm is so dysfunctional, a good long-term goal is to be in a firm where you're happy. And that's actually very important. So that may mean leaving this firm or keeping your eyes open for a place that's more likely to give you what you want. Okay, I would recommend that. A lot of good questions. Here's a question. I am a rising 2L at Yale Law School. I want to work as an appellate litigator and feel that I need to follow track the extremely competitive prestigious Summer 1L Summer, 2L Summer Associate firm as well-known fewer judges, multiple federal clerkships, and if I don't follow that path, I will not be successful. Can you talk about how not to limit my options? Okay, so a couple of things about appellate-related work. So people that go to like Yale Law School and prestigious law schools always want to be appellate. A lot of them want to be appellate attorneys. And you know that's a good goal to have, but there's some problems with going into appellate work, and the problems, they're fairly significant problems, but they're not that problematical. But the problems with appellate, and I've known a lot of attorneys that have gone into appellate related work, it's often very boring because you're basically writing all the time. And you lack contact with people. And so people often hate it for that reason. The other problems are most law firms, even large ones, people that brought in the cases and did all the work at the trial level want to do the appeals. So they're not just going to give you, they're not always going to just give you the appellate work because you went to Yale Law School. They might, but generally not. So that's another thing to be concerned about. So that, and then the other one is that in order to be an effective appellate attorney, you still should understand understand what it's like to be a litigator at the trial court level. Because all of the things that a trial court attorney does, which would be commercial litigation, or attorney does, you're going to be more effective. If you're going to be more effective, you will be more effective if you learn those skills. Learn those skills as well. So those are just a few kind of important things. Learning how to do various motions, learning how summary judgment motions, learning what works and doesn't. All that stuff is important to help you. It doesn't mean that you can't go directly into appellate work, but honestly, the best path to being an appellate attorney, that's a no-brainer path, is the federal circuit court clerkship, or federal district, possibly to appellate, to Supreme Court. And federal district would be feeder to best appellate judge, to best appellate judges. It should be, and then appellate would be feeder to Supreme Court. So you have all the right schools and everything, and then to the Supreme Court. And then these people can get hired as appellate attorneys right off the bat. The other thing you can do too is there are law firms, are small and large law firms, small to smallish law firms all over the country that do appellate work, that do not almost exclusively. So that's one of your best paths. And then the other path would just be to try to join a firm that does primarily appellate related work and then do it that way. But the 2L summer associate at a firm is good. You certainly, you don't want to talk about how you want to join there and go do a clerkship, but you can. But the most important thing to understand with the clerkships is you want to try to get a clerkship with a judge that's a feeder to the best appellate judges, a feeder to the Supreme Court. Your best judges for that are going to be pretty well known and are going to be in the most competitive circuits. And then the only other thing I would recommend is that you may understand it yet, but at most law schools, whether it's Yale or whatever, there will be professors that have relationships with judges, and even firms, judges and firms that you should ingratiate yourself to. So that's kind of it. Those are the things I would recommend, how to do it. Other things you can do too sometimes is you could work in the Justice Department's honors program or something, but this is really what I've talked about here is really what I would recommend doing it. But you can always get into appellate work if your work is very good and people will recognize it. But the problem is that in most major law firms, the attorneys that do commercial litigation will often be the same ones that want to do the work. And then the other thing that's important to understand is when partners work on their own clients, they make a lot more money than if they give it to others. They give the work to others. And then here, an attorney that is giving work to others, the attorney that did the commercial that is appealing, they often want to do the work themselves. And this isn't that important, but I'll just say it and tell you real briefly. If a partner works on their own clients, $1,000 an hour, just as an example, they may get, $500 of that. But if someone else works on it, they might get $200. So the idea is that they have an incentive to do their own work. With appellate matters, it's even probably more significant. It's often hard to get person asked, with no portable business. Yes, the market in New York right now is slowing down quite a bit, pretty dramatically, actually. And the reason is because most law firms in New York are dependent on corporate-related work for the majority of the revenue, most revenue. And that's corporate is dramatic. There's no IPOs in a long time, and corporate is very slow. Very slow. And also, what else is slow? Real estate, very slow. Slow. And then there's just lots of pain. Commercial real estate. Smaller banks and so forth. So right now, the market in New York is not doing well at all if you don't have business. Also, in-house, it's not doing well. The stock market is doing very well, but the problem is the way the stock market's doing. It's very similar if you look at the yield and reversion curves. I think there was an article in Business Week or something yesterday, I don't remember, but if you look at the yield and inversion curves in terms of the price earning ratios of, and this is probably a lot more information you want to know, but it looks like that froth is about ready to collapse, because it's exactly what there was in the 2008 financial crisis, and then also the 2000 financial crisis, or 2001. The market right now is not that great. Let me just say here. Okay. Okay, question. Let me just see here. Oh, sorry. Several of the things you said, report on the target. Initially, even often with the person that worked, put their names on it. Eventually, the plan got worse. However, and that although my work is strong, I'm not numbered politically, being vulnerable when I shouldn't, or feeling defensive when I shouldn't. Okay, so yeah, what I would just remember is the most hot. Remember, what this is what I would like to, what the most successful presidents have done. Don't let anything bother them. Don't get bothered by stuff. That's one thing. The other, to the extent possible. And then the one thing you should also ask yourself before you get mad is you can also ask yourself, will I be mad about this in an hour? In an hour? In a day? In a week? In a month? So if you won't, then what's the point of getting mad right now? That's the point. So there's a whole discipline of thought classes on that particular point that's interesting about that. So this is one of the ways to think about that issue. And if you ask yourself, will I be mad in an hour? I'll be mad in a week. Then what's the point of getting mad right now? And just let it bounce off you. Remember, who was Ronald Reagan? They called him Teflon Ron. Teflon Ron, meaning nothing would stick. He would just, you could say the meanest thing in the world to the guy, and he would just smile and laugh and move on, which is, Okay, so the purpose of going to the office is to basically to be seen working, to get rid. So the purpose of going into the office is to relationships, to be seen working, to get work, look committed, etc. So that's what I would recommend. Those are the purposes. Now, the purpose, but people have these different sorts of ways of thinking about their work. So they have there's sometimes people will break up their time into different kind of segments. And so one segment might be focus days and days off. Then you would have, and then you would have mixed days where you would focus and planning, or I don't know, but these are just some ways to think about the different days that you work. And one of the problems of what you're talking about with the 2-hour commute, if you can work during the commute, that's great. But I don't think it's productive to work full days. I think you need at least one day off per week if you can. And it just gives your body time your mind time to recharge. For thousands of years, religions basically told people you can't work 7 days a week. And I'm not saying religions are right, but that's what I think has emerged. And so I think you definitely want to take at least one day off a week. I don't know that you have to work in the office every day, but if other people are doing it, that's fine. Sometimes it's really up to you, but if you are going to go in the office, I would really work on my relationships. I would work on getting work. And then the days that you're home, it would be interesting if maybe you turn in more hours on those days and then fewer hours on the days you're in the office. So that would be one thing I might recommend in order to help you with that. Okay, so there's one question from last week. Okay, so this is another question. And then I think that's probably it. And so this is a lot of questions. I really appreciate everyone's questions today. This is just awesome. Okay, thank you for this wonderful. This is from last week. I did a state court clerkship and I'm working with a litigation firm for a few months. Because I wanted to practice for the federal court and my firm does not have such an opportunity. Okay. Would doing another clerkship of the federal court show a lack of commitment if my goal? No. So not everyone that does federal district court clerkships ever gets jobs in large law firms. It's not to say that you will if you do a federal clerkship. Federal clerkships some firms are Democratic firms, some firms are Republican firms. Judges are all over the map. So some are Democrats, some are Republicans, because the federal judges are appointed by the president. And the president they usually appoint people that they think are going to push forward their policies, which is exactly what happens. If you look at the recent Supreme Court decision and the education case against Harvard and University of North Carolina, the judges that were appointed by Republicans came out on the side of no affirmative action, and then the judges that were appointed by Democrats, the opposite. It's the same thing. So if you're trying to work in certain firms, whether the judges are Republican or Democrat can affect things. But I think it's better to have done also a federal clerkship. It doesn't necessarily show a lack of commitment because it's doing the same thing. And it does give you a better opportunity potentially to work at a large firm if you do a federal clerkship. And federal clerkships are certainly respected. There are lots of different qualities of federal clerkships because federal judges are different qualities, but definitely doing a federal district court clerkship is good. The reason federal district is better than magistrate is because magistrate judges tend to do a lot of discovery related things. And then federal district courts tend to do trials and the whole matter. So you get better exposure to litigation things when you work for a federal district judge than another type of judge. Okay, so let me see if there's anything else here. Okay, here's one other question. I'll answer that. And then I think this is the last question. Thanks everyone for staying late and asking all these questions. It's very helpful for other people on the call as well as yourself. So what are some of the most common political mistakes that new associates make? And is it a mistake to reach and check in? Sometimes I get great feedback from a partner, and then after I get ghosted, okay, so partners are just trying to get their work done. And so they don't like it when they do not like it when they have to change gears and talk to you about your performance, because it's just uncomfortable. And so really they don't like it. And it's not, your job is really to figure out what's needed and do the best you can. So one of the smartest thing you can do is you can always talk to senior associates, and senior associates will often give you, senior associates or mid-levels, if you're a junior, will often give you pretty good insights into what is required and what you need to be doing and what's important. And so don't worry about it. Your job is not to have your ego stoked or pushed down. Your job is just to do the best job you can and then learn what to do. So you don't want to necessarily check in, but you do want to try to do your best to get more work. And sometimes the way to get more work is if there was a case you worked on or a matter and a new case or something comes out or something that's interesting, send it to them if it's helpful. And that would be a way to show that you're still intrigued and interested in what they're doing. But don't really worry about getting constant feedback. You can't worry about that because they don't have the time. And that would be like, just imagine, I don't mean this in a negative way, but just imagine if you were rushing out the door to go to work and when your gardener stopped you and wanted to get some feedback, and you wouldn't, even if you wouldn't really want to go there, especially if there was something that you didn't like, you wouldn't be happy. So the best feedback is more work. And that's really all there is to it. So that's the only thing you really need to worry about. If you get more work or recommendations from one partner to do work for another, that's really good. So that's one of the most important things. The other thing in terms of feedback is, in terms of how you get good feedback is, let me just see here. To get more work, like in every firm, it doesn't matter, almost every firm, there's going to be associates that are billing 2,500 or 2,000 hours a year or 3,000, whatever. And then there's going to be people in that same firm that are billing 1,000 or 1,500 or whatever. And so those people that are billing 1,500 or lower aren't getting a lot of work. They're doing something wrong. They're not enthusiastic. They're not working hard enough. They're making mistakes. And the best people to give work to are people that you don't have to think about, and you just give them the work and it comes back well done and you're happy. But if you have to do all these reviews and go over things and make all these suggestions, or they're constantly asking, did I do okay? Did I do okay? Then you're not going to like them as much, and you're not going to want to deal with them. So this is how law firms are too. And the people you work for, they don't want to have to constantly give you feedback and ask for your feedback. And so you need to be very careful about that, because it's a lot of work if someone's always asking you how they do, and they'll tell you based on their actions how you're doing. Okay, thank you everyone for being on this webinar. I'm not sure what topic we're doing next week, but I thought this was very helpful today, and I'm glad everyone asked a lot of questions, and I think it's great. The more questions you ask, the more it helps other people. And these were a lot of really good questions, from this question about appellate to getting business, and I certainly appreciate it. And yeah, I'm excited to talk to everyone again next week. And thanks again. Just make sure that's it. Oh, let me see here. Just one other question. I'm just going to try to get this one. Yeah. Is it excessive to include an email explaining your legal thinking with each assignment, or should you just let the work? No, you don't need to do that. So the idea with the work is the work should be very well thought out when you turn it in. And again, what I would always recommend is try to find a senior associate or something to look at your work before you turn it in. Because a lot of times, if you say, you have a few moments to look something over for me, they'll actually like doing that. And then we'll give you good feedback. And in terms of an email explaining your legal thinking, you can do that. They may look at it, they may not. But sometimes, especially if you're talking about stuff that they probably already know or have a good sense of, it's not going to necessarily be that welcome. I don't think you necessarily need to do that. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for being on this webinar. And I will talk to everyone next week. Thanks.